Here from Madness Labs, and this week we're going to be taking on the oh no, yes, okay, let's do it again. The good evening internet.
Good evening internet.
This is 1990s Bobby and Emily from Madness Labs, and tonight we are covering Ionic PWA Toolkit. It is a wonderful suite of tools that we've been playing with over the last couple weeks doing these Madness casts. And now we're going to take more of a deep dive into Ionic PWA Toolkit to do some of the more complicated stuff that might have you stumped if you're coming from like an Ionic application, or maybe you're just building some of these components with some stuff like the Ion button and Ion card and stuff like that, but you haven't got into the more in-depth stuff. So first off, I will do the huge. Please consider supporting us on Patreon. You know, I mean, we do this almost every week. I mean, almost.
Become a patron.
Yeah. So yeah, we you know, we want to scale more of these learning resources. Obviously, the videos have been a little sparse here in the past couple weeks. But we are now back on Tuesdays, and we are making it a firm commitment to do it every Tuesday from here on out. So don't worry about having to check our Twitter so much to figure out when we're going to have them. It's always going to be Tuesdays, 5 p.m. CST. Oh my god. Okay. So consider supporting us on Patreon to make making this content a little bit easier for us, you know, because we do have to pay the bills to keep the lights on, you know. So that being said, this is Emily. She is, wrong way. I'm reversed when I talk. This is Emily. If any of you haven't seen her yet in one of our Madness casts, she is my wife and co-founder of Madness Labs. And basically, she is the accountant, UI UX developer, as well as kind of a orchestrator for Madness Labs. So she is instrumental behind every project here, making sure that that I'm staying on topic and stuff like that. And that's why I made these Madness casts, because she can't tell me what to do. Yay! So hello to everyone out on the YouTube sphere. I hope you guys are coming in this time. I made sure to click that stream button so that I wouldn't be talking to myself for an hour. You know, I just love talking to myself. So yeah, I mean, hello to everyone out there. I don't know if Emily's going to be running the chat tonight or I will, but somebody will answer your lovely YouTube questions. So without any further delay, let us jump right in. So I am now down in a tiny Pokedex. Check me out. Yeah. All right. Let's get going. So I'm going to pop open. This is another project. Let's pop open our Madness Labs PWA, which I don't have open. I'm so ill prepared, y'all. Okay, so let us go and okay. Sorry, I still have the mind of a like 10-year-old, so it's just how I roll at this point. Hello, Builder Chad. Builder Chad's back. What's up, man? Glad to have you back. Sorry it took us so long to make another one. All right, so we're going to pop open Madness Labs PWA. And first thing, Ionic has done a ton of updates here recently. They are kind of deprecating the Stencil router.
It's over 9,000.
Kakarot! So they've done tons of updates here recently. So first off, let's just jump into our current Madness Labs PWA. This is probably where a lot of you are inside of your projects. And let's like step this thing forward to the newest version, because they did change some things about the config and stuff like that. So we'll get into that. So first off, go ahead and jump into your package.json. And we're going to want to update these guys to the newest version. So we have Stencil Core, I believe is on 7.7 or something like that. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to look at another project. Okay. So that is my terrible impromptu singing. Get used to it, peeps. Get used to it. All right. We're going to go into our package.json on this guy. And now we need to upgrade Stencil Core to 0.7.7. That is the newest version. If you want to look off of something, you can go to the Ionic PWA toolkit. I think I already have a link in the description. So if you guys want to head on down there, check that out. And then we're going to update our Ionic Core to upwards of 0.1.4. Okay. Okay, so we've got our stencil router. One more thing that we're going to do, actually, no, that's everything, Bobby. That's everything. Okay, cool. So let's update that, and then this thing's going to scream at us. So let's do npm install. So again, they did some major changes to the compiler, like how it works. So the config file now like lets you configure per like environment or per type of build that you're doing. So that's kind of the big change here. So now if we run npm start, it is going to run the process, and then we'll see here we're going to get this warning message. The great part is they try their hardest not to break things, even though they're like, hey, we changed everything. So they tried their hardest not to break anything. Bless their hearts. Bless their hearts. So they tried their best not to break it, but we have to make some changes to our config file. So you can see it says the config property service worker has been deprecated in favor of blah, 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 blah. So all this means is that we have to set up a specific type of build for basically building a web project versus building it as a dependency or as a plugin that you can plug in somewhere else. So to do all that stuff, we need to actually set that up in our config now. It used to kind of be based on how we would run, like which like one of these build commands we would run, or we would set them up inside of these build commands. But now they've kind of made it really easy to use your component or set of components in multiple different ways. So to do that.
So one of our guests here updated, and they said that their Ion page is gone now.
Ah, yes. Okay. So the infamous Ion page. So what you're going to want to do for that one, I'll get into that here in 1 second, because once we update, we actually have to apply a couple styles, and actually maybe I might be able to slap it out in the chat. Just slap it out. Slap it out. And
Slap chat.
yes, and we might. All right. Yep. CSS. Okay, so we're going to need something like this, and I don't know if this is going to paste very well, but we'll find out. We'll find out. Okay, yeah, that does not paste well. Yeah, it definitely does not paste well. All right, I'll throw it up on a gist, I guess. Okay, create public gist. Okay, I'll post this out to the chat here. So there's a gist of like the styles. So for some reason their Ion app is not getting the proper like styles to make it span the entire page. So if you just use that lump of HTML, or sorry, that lump of CSS, you just slap that in like your app.css or like your main SCSS file, and then you should be able to see your app like over the whole page. Okay, so back to this. So we're gonna go now that we've updated, we're getting this error message. Oh Jesus. Oh, the Taco Bell's catching up with me, Morty. Okay, so oh jeez, oh jeez. Let's go to our Stencil config, and what we're gonna do here is we're going to set up different builds. So again, the difference here is that like our service worker and a couple other things I think we can set up to work per build, like type of build that we're doing. So these types of build where we're actually building and then previewing it in our browser, they're like a www build. And then the other ones are, like a distribution build. So if you want to build a distribution version so that you can actually install this in other people's projects, or another project you might have. Come on, Tab, work with me, bro. Okay, So, and if you want to follow along, this is like all documented now on StencilJS. So if you go to their page on Stencil configuration, you can see here they have this new output targets, and we have a dist and a www. And it took me a minute to kind of wrap my head around what they were getting at, but now that I've done it, I've read the documentation, so you don't have to. Okay, so says I've read it, so you don't have to. So all we have to do now is we need to edit this to set up for our build. And again, I'm going to be a cheater pumpkin eater and copy this off of another project. So give me 1 second. Okay, so again, the big change here is instead of just using service worker, we're going to have a new output targets array. And then our output target has a service worker under it and a type of www. So you can see here we've got output targets, and then we have an array, and then it's an object, and then these are the different builds that it's going to make. So whenever we run our build, it's going to run a www. It's in this case, I don't want it to empty out my www directory. I can probably take that off because it was doing it before. But as you can see, a lot of the settings for like doing build stuff, like for instance, doing clearing, like whether or not it should clear out the directory or the service worker, things like that. Those things are actually done like as output targets now. So you can actually set those per one of these output targets. Either www or dist are the only two right now, but it looks like they might be setting up so that they can do more than that. Okay, so now that we've done that, I think that's the only editing we need to do in our config. I think it should be working at this point. So let's go ahead and run npm start again and see if we get it to open up in the browser correctly.
Your gist link has a 404 error. I can't get to it.
My gist link has a 404? No. Are you sure it's public?
Positive. I just went to it, and our viewers are having trouble.
Where did I go wrong? Oh, I think it's just concatenating the link. Yeah, it's something YouTube's doing to the link, which is just wonderful, right? Okay, so follow up. Actually, I'll just put it into this and I'll just make a commit. Because I might be having the same problem. It doesn't look like I am yet, but I should be. I might have already actually done this. Ah, I did indeed. So actually, if you check out on our GitHub, and I think link is in the description, check out our Ionic PWA, or sorry, our Madness Labs PWA. Check that repo out, and if you go into the app.css file, you should see this lump right here. And as you can see, all it's doing is really just like making it position absolute, giving it top, bottom, left, and right. And you'll see that if I don't have this on here, I'm fairly certain I'll get the same thing where like my navigation bar is at the bottom, it's not spanning the whole screen. So that little lump of CSS will take care of that. Awesome. So I think we're working now. It looks hideous, but I think that's just where we've left this thing. Is just looking hideous because that's what we wanted to do. Okay, so that looks good. It looks good. Yeah, I like to answer. You know, she answers questions. She with an upward inflection. Okay, so we've updated to the newest Ionic PWA toolkit. And now let's go in and let's actually do some stuff. Like we hooked up auth, we did some other crazy stuff in our other videos. But now I'm kind of interested in showing you guys the things that maybe you haven't dove into as far as Ionic goes. And so let's go ahead and go into like in this case, we're on the, what is this, app home. So let's go into our home page, and then on our home page here, I'm gonna go down and maybe let's make a modal. So it's like a very standard thing to do from Ionic, and it's kind of like weird. Like it's like, well, do I put a component called Ion Modal, or how would I go about doing that? Luckily, they don't have a documentation. This is not the luckily part, so don't think this is luckily. No, luckily, they've got it documented on GitHub. If you go to GitHub /Ionic team /Ionic team /Ionic, So again, I said this in the last Madness cast, they've recently pushed all of the core components. They've pushed that up to the master branch. So if you go into the Ionic repo on GitHub, I think I have a link in the description. If not, I'll make sure to get one there. And basically, like, you can click into core, then you can click into source, and then under components, and you can get the each component has a README file that will tell you how to go about using that specific component. And I'm guessing that from looking at their Ion docs and from playing around with it myself, it looks like they're going to actually use these to feed into their documentation website, and then that will be what generates the documentation, which is super cool. So let's go ahead and jump into the Ion Modal. Okay, cool. So this is the Ion Modal, and you can see here we have like a lump of HTML that we can pass in, or we can pass in like a component, and I'll show you guys how to do that. But basically what we do is we actually need to like initialize this controller, which is like the controller for modals themselves, and then we can actually then call like present, which is very much like show or hide that we had in Ionic. It's a little bit different, but if you wanted to actually see like a working example, if you go inside of the home page, the profile page, I believe. Yes, the profile page. And this is on the regular Ionic PWA toolkit. So if you're installing from scratch and wanting to try it yourself, this should still be there. But basically this guy right here kind of gives us the secret sauce. So you can see that like we're importing from Ionic Core toast controller. And again, that's like we would do the same thing when we're calling a modal. So we're doing toast controller, which is those little toast messages, the little pop-up messages that come up at the bottom of the screen. And then we do this weird connect Ion toast controller. And I think what this does is this creates like a tag that's like an HTML element or one of the components out of their library. And I think it like connects it to this property so that we can call methods on toast controller. So we're going to do that same thing, except we're going to go inside of our app-home, and we're going to do that same kind of thing. We're going to import modal controller, and we're going to import that from @Ionic Core. And now it's going to tell us, hey, you haven't used that, and we will. Don't get impatient. Okay, so now we want to link to prop, right? Prop. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say connect. Boom. Oops, connect. And we're going to connect to Ion Modal. Is that it, right? Ion Modal? Oh, no, Ion Modal controller. Durr. Okay, so Ion Modal controller, this is going to be our modal, and we're going to then give it the typings from this modal controller up here. Awesome. So now we've created a prop on our component that contains the modal, and now we can call this modal. So let's go back to the Ion modal. All right. So now if we go back in here, we can actually see that we can call this present and dismiss. And you'll see these documented down here. They've been wonderful about documenting their stuff in these readmes. So, check out the official GitHub repo, peeps. Check it out. Okay, so now what we want to do is we need to go about calling our modal. So to do that, let's go ahead and down here in our component did load, let's just do it right when the page loads so that we can actually see it. And what we're going to do is we're going to say, yeah, that's right, create. So I actually lied. Let's, hold on a second. I swear I've done this before. Okay, that's right. Okay, so what we want to do is a little bit different. We need to initialize the controller. So we need to like connect it and then initialize it. and then we need to create with that controller the actual modal that we're going to be using. So this will all make sense very shortly. So I'm going to say modal control is a prop, and modal control is going to be the type of modal controller that we're importing from Ionic Core. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come down here inside of our component did load. Let's make a new state property called modal. Give that any. And then what we can do is we can say this dot modal equals this dot modal controller. Actually, and we're not going to use a wait either, so let's do this inside of here. So we're going to say this dot modal controller dot create. So we're going to create a modal with the component, and then this is where things get cool. So the component is just the component that you want to load inside of the frame. There's my fingers. This is the component that you're going to load inside of the modal. So we can put any component that we want in here. So in this case, I'm going to do something simple. So like we have these app cards. That might not be the best example. Let's just do the Madness footer. So we'll say Madness footer. And then we should be able to say dot then. And if you're not familiar with promises and stuff like that yet, this is a very standard practice. So you should probably do some Googling on like async await, as well as like the promise architecture, like doing promises. So like this is just a standard promise. This is going to return a promise. So we either do dot then to say like when it's done, it's completed successfully, or catch whenever there's an error and we want to do something like when it errors. So in this case, I'm just going to console.error error.message. And then down here, I'm just going to say this dot modal equals, and then I think it just comes through whenever we create. Down here, you can see when we create, we set it equal to modal element. So that's our modal. So we should actually just say modal. Oops, modal. There we go. Okay, so very simple. I'm going to run through it one more time. So we import modal controller from Ionic Core. Then we create a prop called modal controller, and then we connect it to this Ion modal controller component from Ionic Core, and then we set our typings for the modal controller. Then in our component did load, I'm going to create a modal with our modal controller using the component Madness footer, and then whenever I'm done, it's going to hand me back the modal, and then I can save it to my state so that I can use it. I'm going to call right after I'm like finished creating it. I'm going to say this dot present, and that's going to cause that to show. Sorry, this dot modal dot present, and that's going to cause the modal to show. So I could do this anywhere else. So traditionally, hello Emily's tiny little head. So how you do that? So like this is generally like this modal present. This would be something that like you would do whenever like somebody clicks a button or something like that. So generally you're gonna, like, when the component loads, create your modal, then later on somebody clicks something on your interface, and then that present modal.present is gonna fire to launch it. And then the same thing, modal.dismiss, whenever they're done doing something with the modal, you'll call that dismiss, and then it'll close the modal. We can also pass in some other things here. They've got some so if we scroll down, I think, yeah, there's a ton of stuff that you can do here. So like there's the enter animation, the enable backdrop dismiss, all of these attributes or options on the modal. And I think that's pretty much how it works. Like when you create the modal, you can pass in any one of these guys, and it automatically will, like the enter animation, the closing with keyboard, all that kind of stuff. All those are kind of like options that get fed in like a prop into the Ion modal controller. So super cool. So let's go ahead and save that, and let's check it out in the browser. So if we've done everything right, we should get a modal that pops up as soon as the page loads, and it doesn't because I suck at life. Jeez. Okay, so let's see why it is not loading, because that is what we want to know, right? Okay, so we're getting some gnarly errors about workbox and stuff like that. So let me jump into, I'm going to jump into my application, and I'm going to clear out my cache because it might be that at some point I had a service worker that stored all my shit and now it's messing with me. And it is indeed not. Okay, so here we go. We've got an error that says cannot get query selector of null. And that is happening on, yep, it's happening on our modal controller, which you can see from this tiny little window up here. Okay, so we are getting an error with that saying that we cannot read query selector of null. Alright, so hold please, hold please. We're gonna figure this out. Okay, I think I see what's happening here. Okay, so modal create then catch query selector of null. So I'm almost betting if I'm not crazy. Yeah, I'm definitely crazy. Gosh, dang it. Okay, let's see. This should be working. Gotta love demos. On modal controller, on modal controller. Alright, so it is giving us this error. So let's try something a little bit different. Let's try this time. I think another option that we have, as we can see from our documentation, I think we can actually just inject an inner HTML. Create
Builder Chad 1 said import Madness footer maybe?
Well, generally, what's really cool about Stencil is like every component that you build is automatically accessible inside of your project. So it's a really good call, and that's what when I was first starting to build, I was like, do I have to import every component that I'm like using? But generally, that's not the case. Like for instance, like down here in the body, I can use my Ion card and Ion all that stuff, even though I haven't really done the importing, and that's because in our app.tsx, that's my app.tsx, we've imported our Stencil Core, and actually that might actually be why we're having some issues here. So in our my app.tsx, so this is where like the main routing and everything happens in our application, we actually need to do 2 imports at the very top. So, and I didn't catch this before, and this might actually be why we're having issues. So let's go to, so we need to put these guys at the top of our main app file. So I was told by the lovely people at Ionic that we want to put these at the top because it helps our compiler make sure that all of this stuff is set up correctly. They said it was a typings thing, so that was the explanation I got. Okay, so let's.
Said, oh, cool.
Yeah, exactly. It's really neat. So most of the time, it's able to just kind of figure all that stuff out and like inject all the components. And again, that's kind of where our config comes in. Yep, that was exactly what it was. Boom. Okay, perfect. So now you can see this like shadowy box. It's the shadowy box of death. Okay, so this shadowy box here is actually our footer. So you can see the footer down at the bottom, but it's put it inside of this little Ion modal. And if you don't believe me, because you probably don't, I mean, I do break stuff quite frequently. But you can see here that we've got a div, so you can see an Ion modal at the bottom of our document that's just like, it's magically created. And it's got our Madness footer inside of it. So pretty sweet stuff, right? And again, just checking the documentation, you can do other stuff too. Like say we wanted to set a timeout and like close this thing automatically, or let's do that same thing. I think comes default, if you click outside of the modal, it'll close. Yeah. So there you can see every time our page loads now, we get our modal to pop up. Hooray! Good news, everyone. Okay. So there's a first example. So Ion modals, fairly simple. Again, you're just kind of putting a component in that you want to render inside of there. So if I wanted to be really cool and advertise one of our command line tools, which I do, I will open up another command prompt window here. And what we're going to do in here on this side is let's add a new component to put inside of there. So let's do engine AC for add component. If you haven't installed the Madness Engine, you probably should. And so all you got to do that is do npm install -g Madness Engine. And again, if you don't know what the Madness Engine is, it's just a set of command line, like it's a command line tool that wraps around a bunch of other things that you probably do on a daily basis to make your life easier. So like in this case, I want a new component for like a modal. Like maybe I want a form to pop up that like lets you guys rate how awesome these Madness casts are. Please be nice. So like maybe we want something like that. So let's make like a rating component. Let's like make a new component. And so what we can do is engine AC for add component. I think you can also do add component, or just like, I think it's add component. So you can type it in plain English if you want to. I'm going to use the short version, and we're going to do engine AC, and then we're going to name our component. So we're going to call this one Madness Cast Rater. And I can pass in props if I want, but I don't. Oh no! Oh yeah, this happened the other day with mine specifically. So if you guys have any bugs, if you find anything on the Madness Engine, because it's here to make all of our lives easier, please file a bug at github.com/madnesslabs/MadnessEnjinCLI. Submit an issue, and we have been very responsive, usually closing issues within the day, and at least getting back to you guys, letting you guys know. So cool, I've got mine set back up here. So what project am I in? Madness Labs PWA, that's what I'm in. Okay, so I'm gonna do engine AC, and then I'm gonna do Madness Cast Rater. Cool. So now you can see once I run that command, I have my new Madness Cast Rater component. It's got an SCSS file, it's got my spec file, and it's also got my component file ready to rizzle. So now I can just save that guy, and I can come back in here, and then I'm gonna say Madness Cast Rater, and now we should have our new component. Look at that. Look at that beauty. Oops, did it get... It's freaking out. It's freaking out, man. So now you can see we've got our modal with your new Madness Cast Rater component. Look at that. Wow, 2 seconds. It's a new record. Okay, so we can do the same technique with the modals. We can do that same technique with toast controllers. We can do that with any of these components pretty much in the Ionic library, alert controller, animation controller, any kind of these controllers. Usually this is the way to do it. Infinite scroll was another really fun one to set up. So I might set that up here in a second just to show you guys how that works. But I think another thing that would be really cool to show you guys is that they're kind of transitioning right now from using the Stencil router. So if you guys have been using like the Stencil router up to this point, which we have, they've implemented a new Ionic router that includes like page transitions and some other cool like little features. So like right now, if you're in the router and you're using the page architecture of like Ionic, you'll notice that like it kind of flashes as you move between screens. And I don't know if I'm going to see it here, but yeah, see how we kind of get that, just that brief flash. And now what's cool is the Ion router, it actually will like keep just the main area. It'll just change out the main area, so your header bar, your navigation, all that stuff will stay in place, which is super cool. So let's go ahead and head on over to... Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to head on over to our myapp.tsx. And in here, what we're going to do is we're going to change out our stencil router for our Ionic router. And it's actually fairly simple, so don't get too intimidated. Just follow along, peeps. We got this. We got this. So what we're going to do is we don't have to import anything, which is really cool because it comes built in with Ionic. So we don't have to import our router or anything like that. All we need to do is basically just use the new Ionic router elements. So to do that, I'm going to be looking over at this screen and cheating again because it's what I do. And we're going to use, instead of stencil route, we're going to use Ion route, or Ion router, I should say. So the syntax is slightly different. So it's Ion router instead of stencil router. And then we're going to give this guy an ID. And why we're going to do this is I'm going to show you guys how to actually set up the side nav. So if you're used to like Android apps or a lot of apps nowadays, they have like the sidebar that pops up on the side of the application. And then once you go mobile, it hides away. And then that way you can pull it back out. It's kind of a standard Ionic feature. And most people are getting stumped on kind of how to set this guy up. And so I'm just going to kind of one and done. We'll show you how to use the new router, and then we'll actually show you how to use the new sidebar. Yes, what do we got? What do we got coming from the YouTube feed?
So Builder Chad said that he's been having a hard time finding documentation for this kind of stuff.
Yes, it is not very well documented, and that's actually one of the reasons why we made this cast series, is because right now it's being actively developed. So for these developers to take time to make like really good documentation website and stuff like that, it's been kind of tough, you know, like you don't want to document something that like you're not really sure if that's how it's going to work. And also a lot of this stuff has been kind of broken. You know, a lot of this stuff has been kind of broken and just kind of been pieced together. Yeah, I can see it. Yeah, I can see it. So a lot of stuff that you were doing on the other one is a lot of it is kind of working, as you've seen so far. Like you can kind of use certain little bits and pieces and kind of figure stuff out. But yeah, in general, a lot of stuff has changed. One good tip that you can kind of use is if you hold Control. If you're using VS Code, this is and if you're not, you should be, because it's freaking amazing. So like what you can do is hold Control, and then this will actually let you click on an HTML element inside of the TSX file, and that'll take you directly to the typings for that. And then you can kind of use that to figure out what is actually going on inside of each one of these components. And it'll take you directly into like the node modules folder, so you can kind of click into things. So I actually figured a lot of this stuff out by just reading through the components. They're really simple. So here, for instance, you can see in the action sheet under components, I can see all of the typings, and each one of these says enter animation, leave animation, and you can see all of the different kind of documentation that they've put inside of the actual components. So that way you can kind of read those and figure stuff out. Yes, code or die with these guys. Code or die. So yeah, like use the documentation that they've got, and note that like they have a documentation thing on the way. And actually, hopefully they won't get mad at me for showing you guys this, but I'm gonna do it. So we're gonna cd up and into Ionic docs. And I'll actually show you guys what the new docs are going to look like. So a little sneak peek for you guys that are wanting to get a backstage pass to some of what's going on at Ionic. What happened? What did I do? Oh, it's already watching at port 3000. So what is watching at port 3000 is the real question now. Let's try it again. No! Okay, hold on. I might just have to close my other VS Code here. Too many windows. Oh, that's why it's already open in another. Haha. Okay, so what we can do here is I'm going to show you guys Ionic docs. So if we go to localhost 3000/docs. So this is the new documentation site for Ionic, and I will get my ugly mug out of the way. Ooh, yeah, and follow us on Twitter because that's what I clicked. Okay, so here's the new Ionic documentation. Oh my gourd, look at how freaking beautiful these things are. They're not all here. In fact, there's like almost nothing here. Most of the stuff, again, like your best bet is to look under the Ionic master tree under core source components, and it's got really good documentation. So if you're looking for in-depth documentation on these components, head on over there. But if you want a little sneaky peek at what the Ionic 4 documentation is going to look like, this is it. So you can actually see these awesome little kind of cards that break down the major sections. And then we can actually click into something like theming, and you can see how they do theming inside of the system. So you can see all the different CSS variables that they're setting for Ionic. And then they kind of give you the rundown of like how you would go about doing that. These are still very incomplete. It looks like they're just kind of like, it's just a proof of concept of like the design. So again, hopefully they're okay with me showing you guys this. I mean, it's on GitHub, so I hope. But yeah, this is kind of what you can look forward to on the Ionic documentation. And you can see components is like a section.
It's very pretty. I like it.
Yeah, it's freaking beautiful. And those transitions, man, those transitions. Okay, so that's the good place to go to look for the documentation. But let's actually go ahead and set up the sidebar in our application here so we can see it in action. You'll forgive how terrible this application looks. I've been focusing so much on like building cool services and Firebase and all this different stuff. We really haven't like designed our app. This is the whole point of the series, is to design Madness Labs website, but we've just been having so much fun answering questions, and that's kind of what this all was about. It was us being selfish, you know.
Kind of falling short there, aren't I?
Yeah, and well, I mean, it's like it's not like we don't have the designs. It's just that I've just not been implementing them because we've been having so much fun answering your guys' questions. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna swap out our stencil route for Ion route. So there we go. We got Ion router, and now our stencil routes need to be changed as well. If I can get my stuff up. Okay, so each one of these needs to be Ion route. So again, not a huge like drastically different world here. We're just going to change out stencil for Ion. We no longer need the exact equals true. I'm guessing that was something that like Ionic can kind of handle that behind the scenes, or like they figured out how to handle that stuff behind the scenes, which is cool. So we don't need that exact equals true. We do pass in the component the exact same way. We also can pass in component props the exact same way. So nothing else really changes. One thing we will add though is at the bottom of our router, right before, and actually we're going to take this main tag. Oh yeah, right. Yeah, the bottom of our router right here at the end, and I'll shrink my window down. And what we're going to do is we're going to put this Ion nav tag. And what this is going to do, this is going to, I think, I don't have a 100% good understanding of how this really works, but I'll just give you the rundown of like how I believe that it works. So correct me if I'm wrong.
You can do it.
Yeah, I can do it. Take a blind guess. Okay, so what this is doing is I think this is creating much like an Ionic where you had like, you would say like your frame and like, okay, this is the application, this is the nav bar at the top, and then each page had a section where it would define the navigation, and then that navigation would be loaded into the spots where the navigation should go. So that way you could change it on each page. I think this is very much the same way. So what it's going to do is it's going to feed the actual navigation that you put on each one of your pages into this like placeholder. And then that way it doesn't have to like wait and reload the whole page. It's just going to get the content area, and then anything that changes in the header, it'll just kind of slap it in there on the fly. So it creates a way better aesthetic. And so you can't really even see it right now, but once we get this thing finished hooked up, or once we finish hooking this thing up, once we finish hooking this thing up, we should be able to see what we're trying to see here. So cool. So now we've got our router here. Let's add a sidebar because that's what we're doing, right? Okay, so we're going to use this Ion SplitPane. And so if you've been using the documentation for Ionic 2, you'll probably be used to this way of doing it here. Oops, there we go. And I'm kind of using a pre-built one, and let's just make this real simple. Let's call this one apps, and we will link this to apps, and on click, close menu bind. So let's get a close menu function here. Okay, and Ion split pane. Okay, So, okay, on app, Ion menu, Ion content, Ion menu, Ion app main. What am I missing? What did I do? Ion app has no corresponding closing tag. So I have too many closing tags somewhere. Ion menu,
Well, you got a main
Ion menu, Ion split page, pane, not page. Haha. Pane when large. Ion split pane. Ion menu, Ion content, Ion content. Ah, this Ion list is not closed either. Okay, there we go. Now we're looking good. Okay, so now we've got our Ion app. So this is like our main, so like, again, this is the main app file. So you can think of this like the main shell of our application where we're going to load everything into. And then we've got this Ion split pane, which shows when the screen is large. And then we have an Ion menu, and this is the side menu that's going to pop over the page when it's on mobile, or be over to the left whenever it's large. And then we have the main section, and this main section then holds the router, and that's like the router is the spot where we're going to inject the actual page. So if we save this, and let's remove this banner and keep it really simple. So if we save this, I don't believe it's going to work. I'm like fairly certain it won't work. Oh, well, it'd probably help if I started my build process. You know, it might help. Maybe.
A little.
Maybe. Okay, so, you know, pause for water break. Okay, so one thing we're going to do here, because I keep having it pop up over and over again, I'm going to go and I'm going to turn off my, I'm going to turn off my modal from presenting at least. Okay, so now we shouldn't have a modal popping over the screen. Cool. So, okay, I don't think it's going to show. And there's a reason why it's not going to show. And that's because we need to actually have a div. We need to have a div with a class, or sorry, a div with main. Then we need to actually, like give the corresponding ID to this my app. So, and I'll show you guys, like, so I'm not just going to like say that and be like, peace out. There you go. Figure it out. Okay, so what we're going to do is down here where it says main, I think this is the intent. Like, this is what they want to get it down to. So this main will be the main content area of your app. And I think this is very HTML5 compliant, search engine friendly, screen reader friendly, everything like that. So I think that's what they're aiming for. However, it doesn't work right now. So we're going to do it so that it does work right now. So we're going to make a div, and then we're going to say main as one of the attributes. And then we're going to say ID equals app content. And then what you're going to see here is this ID app content is going to correspond with this content ID on the Ion menu. And so what that's going to do is it's going to kind of link those two and let it know that, like, okay, this guy over here is the menu, this guy here is the content. Okay, cool. And so now when we do that, now we should actually see what we want. So let's, oh no, we're getting a bug in our compiler. Okay, this is a parsing error. This happens every once in a great while. Save, and then it should just go away. Yeah. Okay, it's more broken. Yay. Okay, so it may be more broken, but it's working. So you can see here, when I get to a large screen, it shows, and when I get to a smaller screen, it hides. So our app sidebar is working as it's supposed to be, but our actual content is not showing. So let's figure out why. And I think I've already fixed this once on another project, but I forgot how I did it. So now we're gonna revisit it together, guys, because that's what this is about. We're all in this together. Okay, so Ion app. Platform. Actually, am I getting to the right? Let's try going to apps. So I'm getting the same thing when I go to apps 2. Collection. Cannot read on auth changed of undefined. On auth changed. Okay, this has to do with our authing. So let's go in our app home and let's just temporarily disable this guy. See if that doesn't fix it. It doesn't. It doesn't because it doesn't like us. Okay, so let me see if I can see any differences in how we're doing this. It might be the structure of our my home app home. So in our app home we have, yep, it is. No, sorry. Ion page. Yeah, I know. I'm missing a bunch of stuff here. So I'm going to kind of compare this to another one that I know is working. So Ion menu, then we have div, then we have the router. SplitPane. Okay, one thing I'm noticing here is in mine, this is inside the SplitPane. So that's what I did wrong. So we need to take this out of the Ion app. And we need to put it inside of the Ion SplitPane, of course, because it has to know, like, this is the SplitPane, so this is what's creating the two sides. And let me put my ugly mug back up here. So this is what's creating, like, the two sides. So Ion SplitPane is like the overall box. Then you have over here, you have the Ion menu, and that's got the content ID. And then you have the main area over here that's got the corresponding ID, and that kind of ties this all together. So now, if we save, we're going to get what we should be getting. I thought you were going to work. Okay, so we still got some kind of a bug going on here. So let's see if we can figure it out. SplitPane, Ion router. I'm not gonna lie, it looked pretty good to me. Looked pretty good to me. So I'm gonna kill our build and then restart it because maybe something got wonky. There we go. Yep. So it's just a little wonky. Okay. So now you can see we've got our sidebar, and when we go small enough, okay, that's what we're experiencing. And I've had this happen before too. So what we have here is now, like, we go to our desktop and everything looks good because, like, our stuff's all set up correctly. But then as soon as we go down to where the thing closes, it messes up again. And so to fix that, I've ran across all these things because we're actually using the Ionic PWA toolkit. We're using this on a project currently. So yeah, we've run into all of these things, and that's why this cast has been super cool, because we get to kind of play around with things and then show you guys the little headaches that we've run into and little things that we've had to fix. I think it might be in this page. Yeah, I think this might be it. So I'm gonna head on over to my app SCSS, and I'm gonna throw this guy in here. Maybe. Menu is load. Oh, that's why. Duh. You take this opacity 0 out. Take all this transition stuff out. There we go. You should be working. Okay, so we still got the same thing going on. We've got the sidebar working, and then as soon as we go small enough, what's happening is the Ion, not the Ion app, the Ion split, Ion menu, this guy. Okay, let's see. Ion nav. So let me see if this is what does it. Absolute top 0, left 0, right 0, and bottom 0. Nope.
Builder Chad says thank you. He appreciates these. He's had lots of headaches with Ionic Core.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a trial and error with us as well. I mean, there's been a lot of times, some of these components, what you're going to find is some of these components are so freaking simple that it makes sense to just write your own. Like for instance, we wrote our own material floating button, just because like some of these things, even like when it first came out, the modal controllers and stuff weren't like wired up. So we made our own modal. It's a lot easier with these components to build out some really robust functionality. So I mean, that's the beauty of these things. But yeah, a lot of the convenience with Ionic is kind of can kind of be lost. Let's see. So as you can see, we've got like our Ion page here is like not showing, like we're not getting any height on our app home. So let's try and see, this is just kind of generally what I do. Like I'm just playing around with the styles here in the element panel. 0, oops, right 0, top 0, bottom 0. So I'm just going to keep playing with stuff until I get what I'm looking for. Display block. Yeah, see, still not getting what I'm looking for. So one of these guys, Ion content. Let me make sure I don't have anything wrong with like how my page is laid out. Because they've been changing a lot of things here recently. Just really gearing up to make like Ionic 4. And so like I'm trying to really wrap my head around this stuff. And hopefully start to release more small tidbits as things are kind of put together. These MadnessCasts are great. They're a great place for us to kind of clarify our process and play around with things with you guys iteratively, and then to answer questions. That's another huge part of this series. But I think here soon we're going to start releasing what we're going to call Madness Bits, which are going to be little tiny videos of just one tiny thing. So like maybe just how to get a navigation running, just how to get Firebase set up or Firestore, something like that. So taking some of these things, these concepts that we've done in these MadnessCasts that have been huge and hour long, and then really condensing them down to like 2 to 5 minutes, and then uploading those frequently throughout the weeks. So yeah, just stay tuned for that. We're gonna try to do more cool, like, stuff like that as we move forward. Okay, so we're still not getting our page here. So I'm gonna look at another project just for reference. We got Ion page, then we have our Ion content. So here in our app home, we have our Ion page. We get this show page. What does that do? Ion header and Ion content. All right, Ion page. Ion header. Let's check out our TMG header. Ion header. Okay, this might be it. Might. A big might on this. We might have to put an Ion toolbar inside of our Ion header. Like I said, don't get your hopes up. This is really the only difference I'm seeing between mine and this one. Yeah, I figured as much. Womp womp. No, Justin, help. Sorry, we've been known to bother the shit out of Justin at Ionic.
Go, Justin Willis. He's awesome.
Justin, you've gotten quite a number of shout outs on these casts. I don't know if you watch them, but you're our hero. I mean, we love Max and we love Adam and we love everyone at Ionic, but Justin has a special place in our heart with all of the Stencil stuff that he's been doing here recently. Okay, so we're still having the same problem. I got to figure out where the heck this is coming from. So something on our page, and it might be this. Maybe it's this modal. No. Yes. No. Nope. It's definitely not the modal. Our split pane's fine. Our menu. This div with a class of main. It might be this. Left, right, 0, bottom, 0. Aha! We figured it out. All right. So it is actually our div with a class of, or div with an attribute of main. So let me see if I can find where I did this in my other one, because I would have had to fix this unless some magic is happening. Okay, so I have actually fixed this. So wow, it is that easy, guys. It is literally this easy. All right, you ready? Because it's gonna blow your mind. We're gonna go into myapp.scss. And then right here at the bottom, we're going to put an app content, which again is the ID that I've given the div with a class of main. And we're just going to tell it to have a width of 100%. And I think that should fix it. Yep, there it goes. So it's that easy. I should submit a pull request. I should do my part as a good community member. But I probably won't. No, I think they've actually got this one documented already. So there we go. Now we've got our application sidebar. So now we've got sidebar on desktop and no sidebar on mobile. Yeah. Okay, so now let's like get a button to open that guy up, right? Because that's the next logical thing. So to do that, let's go into our myapp.scss. I am not speak are good today. I know I speak good. Okay, I can do this, guys. I can do it. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go into our main app file again, and we're going to make a little method to open up our sidebar. So really simple stuff. So it's so simple that I'm still going to be cheating over here on the other monitor. It's that simple. Okay, so actually I think they might have made it really simple. Yeah, layout, sidebar. Like I might even be overcomplicating it, probably.
There's a possibility.
No, oh yeah, it's all, actually I'm so dumb. Yeah, it's actually very easy. What we're gonna do is we have a couple different ways we can go about doing it. So I'll show you the way that I've kind of got it set up in another one, but I'm almost guessing that you could probably do something similar to what we just did with the Ion modals. You could probably do something similar with your navigation as well, like maybe a controller for controlling the navigation and then having it pop open and close, or a split pane, maybe a split pane controller. I'll have to look for that. But for right now, I'll show you how I have it set up on another one, because it'll also give you a little bit of insight as to like how the different ways are like that we can go about doing this. So what we're gonna do is here in we're probably gonna want to do it actually the best way, and we're gonna do it the best way, guys, because that's only the best for you guys, only the best. So what we're gonna do is let's add a component that'll actually control our top bar on our application. So let's do engine AC for add component, and we'll do like Madness header. Yeah, let's call it Madness header, and bingo bango bongo. Now we've got our Madness header. So in our header, let's go ahead and put our stuff that we have here. So like I have my header bar with all my stuff in it. I'm gonna go ahead and take this, all of this Ion header niceness, going to take that out, and instead I'm going to do Madness header. Boom. Now we've got our Madness header here. And then inside of our Madness header, we're going to put that content. Ha ha ha, yes. We're going to put that. Ha ha. Oh, God. Okay, so we're going to... Yeah, there we go. Okay, so now we can put our toggle function directly inside of our navigation, which is where we want it, right? Because we don't want to be toggling it all willy-nilly. Okay, so what we're doing is we're just going to do a document query selector, and then we're going to select the Ion menu. And then we're going to do Ion menu.toggle. So again, remember, components are just components, right? I mean, right? So components can have their own built-in methods that we can access, and that's what we have here. We're going to actually do an Ion menu, and you can see I've typed it with HTML Ion menu element. And then we're going to select that guy, and then we should have a toggle method. And where did I come up with this HTML Ion menu, you might be saying? Well, I will explain. So what this is again, these are like it automatically, Stencil builds us a component typings file. So if we go into I say a lot, man. I just can't stop. I'm addicted to it. I'm addicted. Okay, so like under our source directory, it generates this component.d.ts, and you might see some of your components in here. It's because it's all the typings for all of your components, as well as every component that you've like plugged in to your Stencil build process. So we can actually go and autocomplete these things. So for instance, if we are working in this case with an Ion menu, if I start with my typing here, I can say HTML, and what you're going to see is all of the different typings for all of the different components inside of our application. So usually you can just take a stab at it. Like I'm going to do Ion, oh, there you go, Ion backdrop. Let's see, we might even have one, Ion. Let's do menu. Oh, yep, look, Ion menu controller element. So I'm betting any amount of money, that is how like you could just directly access the menu controller. But we're just going to do it this way. We're going to say menu element, and then now that's going to give you your typing. So now when I do Ion menu dot, you can see I get all of the different things that I can do specifically with my menu. So I can open my menu or toggle my menu, and I'm going to do toggle in this case. So cool. So Ion menu toggle. So now whenever I run this toggle menu, it's going to select my menu, and then it's going to toggle it. Sounds pretty good to me. Cool. So let's do this image right here. Let's just slap it on this guy. Start slapping it around. And we're going to do this dot toggle menu dot bind. So I'm doing dot bind in this case. So you might have seen in Ionic, you can kind of, or in Stencil, you can kind of do it two different ways. We can either do like a binding with a fat arrow, so we can say this dot toggle menu, and then we can pass in like the event. Like if we wanted to pass the event through, we could do something like that. And that way, if we had extra params, like we wanted to put in the actual menu item they clicked on, or something like that, we want to pass data through, we can do it this way. But a shorter way is we can just do this dot toggle menu bind this, and that'll automatically just take the event and pass that through. And again, at the end of the day, you just need a self-binding function, so it just has to have the scope of this, so that we can actually go about accessing our class inside of our method here. Cool. So we've got toggle menu bind. So now when I click on that image, it should open my navigation, or toggle it. So it should open and close my navigation. So when in doubt, console log that shit out. So let's go ahead and console dir. So if you've never used console dir, I'm actually like, I'm ashamed to say how like recently I've discovered console dir. Is a way of like taking an element. Yeah, I got nothing. It's a way of taking an HTML element. So usually if you do like a console log on an HTML element, you're just going to get the HTML element. It's going to pop out in the console. console dir will give you like all of the JavaScripty stuff on it. So in this case, it'll show us our functions, our methods for toggle and open, as well as like any public properties and stuff like that. So all that's going to be accessible or going to be visible when we do a console dir. So I'm not getting anything when I'm clicking on this picture, and it could be just because this picture is not there, like it's so tiny, or there's something that's like sitting over the top of it that won't let us click stuff. Yeah, it's definitely that or one I said. Let's see. Okay, so I think this is a pointer events thing. So like what's happening here is, yep, there it is. Okay, so what's happening there is that our modal, which we hooked up in our homepage, right? Our modal is overlaying the entire screen. So it's kind of creating this invisible wall that we can't click through. So to fix that, what we probably want to do is we probably want to set like a Z index of some sort, either a Z index on our, I want to do like a Z index on our app content. Yeah, let's try it. Well, let's see. Where is this being put at? So my app on Modal is inside of my app. So I probably want to do it on something a little bit more specific. So I probably want to do it on this app content. Let's try doing like a Z index of like 9 or something and just see if that does it. A position relative also might help. Which is kind of strange. I didn't have this problem in another project when I was using this. It's kind of weird. Maybe is it the fact? No, that should be fine. So yeah, we get this invisible wall. I love this. Like why? Just why? On Modal. It's got a ridiculous Z index too. All right, well, let's see. How do I want to do this? I don't even know. So I want to give maybe my SplitPane. How do I want to handle this? So yeah, so we got this invisible wall here. Let's just, God, that is so strange. Again, I don't have this problem on my other one. Make sure I have my latest. Yep, that's right. Yeah, that is super weird. All right, so how do we want to handle this? Let's go ahead and dialog.
You said the Z index doesn't work?
Well, the problem is, okay, so the problem is that if we mess with the Z index, like remember the modal, we want it to overlay over the top of the whole screen. But what we don't want, no router equals true. That's kind of weird. So what we don't want is we don't want Z index style. Yeah. We don't want to end up putting our SplitPane over the top of our modal, because then when our modal's called, we won't be able to see our modal. So we're kind of just stuck in this weird spot. Like, what do we do? How do we put this guy over this guy? So let's check back at our home page again and see if I didn't do something wrong here. Because I mean, it looks pretty good. Because I mean, if we did this, it would make sense.
And we can't have like the overlay start below the header or something?
Yeah, see, that's even weirder. So now you can see, like, when I refresh, oops. So I get my modal, and as soon as I close it, So let's see, modal controller. So as soon as I close it, I get access back to my page. So I close it, and now I can actually click on stuff. And see, that's what you'll notice. If you notice, there's that animation I was talking about. So if you're new to using the Ionic router, this is probably going to be something that's like super cool. So you can see that now it does those transitions, and again, you can see that it kind of kept my navigation in place as it transitioned the new page in. So it's a little less jarring as you go in between states. And it also does the back animation. So you'll see right there, it like knew I was going back to a previous state, so it automatically took care of the animation. So there you go. So now you can see that our sidebar is working. So we've got that hooked up. And again, there's tons of stuff that you can like jump off to from that. There's a lot of things that like we like to do, like you know, when you're authenticated, sometimes you'll get the navigation. When you're not, you won't. So you can do like a ternary down here in like your main app page to check if they're logged in or not, and then show a different state accordingly. But yeah, I think that's a pretty good intro to like some of the bigger things that have come down the pipeline. We've got the Ion SplitPane to do a basic like sidebar navigation. We also set up a controller. We linked to some controllers so that we could do like in this case our modal. And then again, we can do the same things with like infinite scroll. Infinite scrolls the same way. Like you can set up this infinite scroll, and just like in the old Ionic, so see, you can see they kind of have the Ionic 2 documentation here. In the old Ionic, you can set something up just like that in Stencil by just doing, let me open up my page where I'm using it. So you can do something very similar to that. So you can just put in Ion infinite scroll at the bottom of your page. So maybe my apps, or app, what was it? Apps. Yeah, good naming, Bobby, good naming. So like down here at the bottom of the page, you can do an Ion infinite scroll, and then you can put a disabled, which that disables that element. So like for instance, if you get to the end of the search results, you could have it like turn that to true, and then that would disable the infinite scrolling and it won't call anymore. Then all you got to do is latch on to the infinite scroll event. So if you, they don't really have it well documented here, but this is the event. So Ion infinite is the event. So to listen to that guy, I could just do a standard listen. So up here at the top, I'm going to get rid of my disabled so it doesn't scream at me. Up here at the top, I can go about doing a listen. Hey, listen. So I can listen to that Ion infinite, and that's going to log out. This is going to be launched whenever I get to the bottom of the page. So again, it's just wrapping your mind around the fact that like Ionic is now components. So like just all the same stuff that you've already been doing in Stencil, that's the same thing that they're doing inside of Ionic as their components. And again, right now it's documentation is still being worked on, but there's enough on their GitHub under these READMEs to get you going and to get you actually making, I mean, I would say like it is nearly production ready. Like we've been using these components for months now, building an application, and we haven't had too many things that we couldn't do. And anything that we couldn't do, we easily programmed around or made something ourselves, because just components are just so easy to get into. So I mean, we haven't really had anything that's been a giant wall, and in fact, we've actually had the exact opposite. We've really been getting into Firebase and Firestore and Cloud Functions and all that stuff, and we're noticing just an exponential increase in our productivity, as well as like typings being like across the board now in the front end and the back end, really tying things up and making things make a lot more sense. And now that we've been scaling a team, which just kept us super busy here recently, we've then like noticed that like it's easier to work with other people, because now we're breaking things down to the simplest unit of work, a component, and then we're like handing that information out to somebody else. They don't have to know about the whole architecture of our MVC and all this different stuff, which again, we don't even have one now. On our project, our current project that we're working on, we've just gone completely vanilla JavaScript. No need for anything else. If you wire your data up right, you really don't need the MVC pattern unless you want to. If it makes your life easier, if your team's really adopted to something, great. And that's kind of what the plan for Ionic is with Ionic 4 is it's kind of opt-in if you want it. You want to build a version with React, go for it. You want to build a version with Vue, go for it. If you want to build one vanilla, that's us, go for it. So it's more about developer preference and less about this whole like you have to adopt our framework and our way of thinking, which we're totally cool with. So there's a general guide of like Ionic PWA toolkit. Again, there's a lot of other things in here. There's so much stuff to cover that we can't possibly get it done in one video. But again, I think this gets some of the big ones that people get caught on: getting the navigation set up, how do you set up the main structure, also showing off the new Ionic router, and then finally pretty much just showing like how to implement controllers like the toast controller or the modal controller in order to do some of the things that you're used to from Ionic. So that's pretty much it, I think, for this cast. Thanks everyone for there's our awesome, before we sign off here, there's our infinite scroll firing an event, and so you can see we can grab the details here. We can grab the infinite instance, so we can go about doing our calling our position and the number of elements and all that stuff. So like all that stuff that you're used to from like implementing in Ionic 1, the scroll controller or whatever, that stuff all comes back through a custom event. So again, very component driven. So like it's not too hard to wrap your head around. Like we're either listening or we're emitting. So like, yeah, it keeps this stuff really, really simple. Did you say something?
No.
Oh, okay. So there you have it, guys. Thanks for joining us on this week's Madness Cast. We're gonna sign off now. I think that's pretty much does a good little intro to the PWA toolkit. Again, check it out over on Ionic's GitHub repo. So if you head on over the Ionic team GitHub repo, again, links, description. So if you head on over there, they've got the PWA toolkit, and you can set this up for yourself. If you want to use our engine command line tool to do it, you should, because it's awesome. What you can do is you can just type in the name of the repo. So I'm going to start a brand new project here with the Ionic PWA toolkit. So let's do engine start, and start will pull down a GitHub repo and run the npm install for you, and then do some other extra stuff if you want it to. So we can do engine start Ionic team, and it's automatically going to assume GitHub as the repository central. So Ionic PWA toolkit. And then we can name our project. So I'm going to call this Bobby. Oops. Whoa. I got a little X rated there. Bobby's PWA. Oh, goodness. Okay. So then we can do a flag here for E-E for our editor. And I'm going to say code insiders. And so what this is going to do, this is going to clone down the project, cd into the directory, run the npm install. Then it's going to open up the editor of our choice, in this case, code insiders, all in one command. So in that one simple command that's no longer than a git clone, we automatically, boom, got a project up and running. And I'm going to freaking pop it open in my browser just because I can. So now I'm going to npm start, and I'm off to the races right off the bat, guys. It's that easy to get up and running with an Ionic PWA. With the EnjinCLI tool. So feel free to check that out. Give it a look-see. Let us know what you guys think. And I think we're going to sign it off this week with a madness challenge. So we challenge you guys on Twitter, okay, to @MadnessLabs or just use the hashtag MadnessCasts. And these Madness Casts have had a habit of just taking the worst possible screenshots, and I am in love with it. Like every derpy face I could possibly make, this thing has caught. So I challenge you guys now. I challenge you to find the goofiest screenshot in this video, and I want you to take it and I want you to send it to us at Madness Labs. And you can use the hashtag Madness Challenge, because we're going to start these Madness Challenges at the end of our videos now. And what we're going to do is we're going to challenge you, the guys that are watching this, to do something. Next week, we're going to be challenging something that's a little bit more creative and actually on topic and on point, and something that's actually useful. But this week, let's start it. Let's be fun. Let's be fun and make fun of me, because that's what this is all about.
An easy start.
Yeah, easy start. Making fun of me is like you look like a punk Abraham Lincoln. Boom! I already got you guys started. So take the worst possible screenshot you can find in this video, and I want you to take that and I want you to add us. And the more you make fun of us, the better. So yeah, like, you know, just go wild, go bananas, just ruin my self-esteem, because, you know, we all know I need that. So this has been Bobby. Back with, yeah, and Emily, and we're Madness Labs, and we'll see you guys next Tuesday.
Time.
I'll give you some free ones. Yeah, that's gonna be a thing.